of a car, went down through Brisbane, down to Newcastle and Sydney and Adelaide, sitting like this, mile after mile in the back of this sodding car, talking to next to no bugger. It were great. But it's amazing if you keep going because you believe what you're doing is right, how the waters open and things change, as long as you don't give up. When you give up, that's when it all stops and nothing can manifest from it. But when you keep going, if what you're saying has any validity, it will eventually be shown to be so. And all that effort, which appeared to be a waste of time and a waste of effort, in the end starts leading somewhere. And my God, it's leading somewhere now as humanity starts to wake up increasingly in vaster and vaster numbers to remember the full magnitude of who we are. I'd like to thank Adam and all the team for putting this event on so magnificently. And I just ask one thing of you. I want no discord today. Well, actually, you can have discord, just don't blame me for it, okay? Because I'll tell you for why. A few days ago, I turned up at immigration at Melbourne Airport. 20-hour flight, knackered, and I'm standing there and in the line, and I go over with my passport, and it was amazing because she stamped it immediately, and I thought, that was quick, no questions. And I'm waiting for it to come back, and she turned around and gave it to some guy who was waiting behind. Would you go with this gentleman, sir? I've heard those words before, many times. And so I followed this fella. They were very nice, very courteous. And he takes me into these back rooms and hands me over to this lady who takes me into this kind of bright white room, like an Agent Smith type room. And she puts this document in front of me that I have to sign to say that I've read it. And it said a number of things, but this is the key thing. Section 501 of the Migration Act 1958, the Act, provides a discretionary power to refuse to grant or to cancel a visa if a non-citizen does not meet the requirements of the character test. Moi? A non-citizen will not meet the requirements of the character test if, among other things, there is significant risk that they will vilify, incite discord in, or represent a danger to the Australian community or segment of the Australian community. I think it's a good idea. I think we ought to expand it. I think we ought to have a character test for government ministers and officials. Reckon? I think so. I think so. Because if we did, Canberra would be a bloody ghost town, wouldn't it? And Westminster and Washington and all of them. Character test. Discord. Definition of discord. Lack of agreement among persons, groups, or things. Oh, call the bloody army out. Mustn't incite that. Tension or strife resulting from a lack of agreement, dissension. Well, that shut Parliament down for a sodding start, isn't it? A confused or harsh sound or mingling of sounds. Parliament again. There you go. And finally, inharmonious combination of simultaneously sounded tones, a dissonance. So if anyone's got a trumpet, play it in tune, or I'm in the crap here, okay? With the government. I don't know. And of course, like all this legislation, terrorist legislation, which doesn't define terrorist, this can be defined by the minister who makes the decision, according to this document, in any way they bloody like. But, as you know, I am someone who is known to bow to authority and bow the head, so I'd like to say that I take the warning extremely seriously, okay? I take the document extremely seriously, and I've thought of nothing else. I shall watch every word I say today. You got a bloody laugh, it's so daft. And I guess there will be someone in the audience who's come to monitor what I say. Otherwise, there's no point in signing the document. And I'd just like to welcome them wherever they are. And I really do hope that by the end of the day, they will have found it within themselves to get a life. And then their children and grandchildren might be proud of them, instead of asking them, "Mummy, Daddy, what were you doing when this state came in that now controls every area of my life?" "Oh, I was helping to do it, dear." Yeah, okay. My God, do we need this or what? The whole theme of today is to free our minds. It's more than that, as I'll come to. Free our minds from the programming that turns infinite consciousness, having an experience, into a four-legged animal from which we get wool, that have lost the ability to decide perception and reality for themselves and have to have it decided for them. Without that, the few couldn't control the many. With it, it's a piece of cake. This is Wilhelm Reich setting the tone for the day, an inventor and researcher and psychologist. He said this: "Am I a spaceman? Do I belong to a new race on Earth bred by men from outer space in embraces with Earth women? I request my right and privilege to have such thoughts and ask such questions without being threatened to be jailed by any administrative agency of society. In the face of a rigid, doctrinaire, self-appointed, ready-to-kill hierarchy of scientific censorship, it appears foolish to publish such thoughts. Anyone malignant enough could do anything with them. Still, the right to be wrong has to be maintained. Massive basic human right, the right to be wrong. We should not fear to enter a forest because there are wildcats around in the trees. We should not yield our right to well-controlled speculation. It is certain questions entailed in such speculation which administrators of established knowledge fear. But in entering the cosmic age, we should certainly insist on the right to ask new, even silly questions without being molested. And I demand that right for myself, and no men in dark suits or uniforms are going to deny me that, for I am consciousness, not some clone of some idiotic, brain-dead system that seeks to tell me who I am, and what I can and cannot do with my own mind. So, when we open our mind, or go beyond that even, then we start to see reality in a different way. This is a wonderful quote. "You were born an original, don't die a copy." So many people do that. They go through their lives thinking the norm in society is the only possible perception of reality. And because the majority appear to believe it, therefore, by definition, it must be true. Truth does not change because it is or is not believed by the majority of the people. As Gandhi said, even if you are in a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. Or as this proverb says, the multitude is always wrong. And invariably, when you look through what we call history, it turns out that way. It is the people who have challenged that have moved us forward in terms of our understanding of who we are and the nature of the world we live in. Few centuries ago, the majority believed. Why? Because those people perceived to be all-knowing, the scientists and religious people of the day, said the earth was flat, and if you went too far, you'd fall off the edge. And people were jailed and vilified for saying, actually, it's a sphere. And then when the evidence becomes overwhelming that the earth is actually a sphere, then that becomes the new norm, and now anyone who says that it's flat is now ridiculed for believing that. The difference is, what is the norm accepted in society at any one time? And that's the truth that people follow. We live in a world of conflict and war and famine, where people, a few people, control and hijack the wealth at the expense of the vast majority. We live in a world which, take a step back, deep breath, look at it again, is utterly bloody insane. And we're asked to believe, and so many people do, that we are somehow at the cutting edge of human evolution. We're nowhere near the edge of what is possible and what is there to be known. But the norms are very powerful, especially when, from cradle to grave, we are constantly manipulated and confused with contradictory information, and when we're pressured to believe it, otherwise we'll get ridiculed or condemned for being different. We are in a situation, a world brilliantly described by this man, Michael Elner. Just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religions destroy spirituality. That's where we are. So we live in an upside-down world. Why? That's what I asked 20 years ago. And the answers are amazing when you start to take back the camouflage that's put before us. All the way through our lives, we are being given instructions, we're being given directions, and basically the world has been turned into a maze of confusion. And it's done to keep us from the simple truths, because complexity is there to stop us finding those simple truths. But when you connect the dots between apparently unconnected people, situations, organizations, world events, and you start to see how they fit together, suddenly this bewildering, confusing world starts to take on a much clearer dimension. Because only by connecting the dots over, as you'll see today, a vast range of subjects and situations and people, can you start to see why the world is upside down, why it is as it is, and crucially, behind that complexity, those smoke screens of complexity, why behind that is an amazing revelation of who we are and the nature of life. When we start to realize that far from being Ethel Jones or Billy Smith, we are all that is, has been, and ever will be. That is the difference between who we are and who we are manipulated to believe we are. And when you connect those dots more and more, and it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. It is putting a jigsaw puzzle together. When I first started doing it, what I was looking for was those straight bits that make up the frame. And in terms of what I'm doing, that was understanding the structure through which a few can control the many. And then as you keep putting more, at the start, it's like, where the bloody hell does this go? What's this? Oh my God, it's so confusing. The more you put the pieces together and the picture appears, the quicker you can put the pieces in, because you start to see what the game is. And the elephant in the living room is that there are two streams of reality going on together. One is a secret agenda to create a global fascist centralized dictatorship to dictate to and control on every level every man, woman, and child on the planet. Going alongside that is what I call the movie. That's the version of the world that we are given through the mainstream media, through what we call education. And that is to explain away the changes going on, which are actually the agenda coming in a coordinated way, but the movie's there to explain them away in an uncoordinated fashion so we don't see where it's really going. Those days for so many people are now over because we can see where it's going, where it wants to go. And key to everything, and that's what I'm really going to concentrate on in the first half, or first third, 3 sections today. The key to everything else in this global conspiracy is to put humanity into a false identity, a false belief in who we are. It has to get us to see ourselves in terms of little me, powerlessness. What can I do? I'm just Joe Public, and I'm just Ethel Jones or Charlie Smith. That's who I am. I'm the reflection in the mirror. That's me. I have no power. When in fact, we are infinite consciousness having an experience as Charlie Smith or Ethel Jones. But what the manipulation has to do to put us in the box of mass control is to persuade us that we are the experience. And they've done it brilliantly so far. And when we accept that, this is the state that we're put in energetically, what I call the eggshell. Instead of accessing the infinity of knowledge, understanding, awareness, love, all-knowing that it is possible to access, because that's who we are, we close down. And what do we say? We close our minds. We close our minds and we operate on a fraction of who we are. Compared with the infinity of who we are, we close in on a fraction that is nothing less than the village idiot by comparison. And only by putting us in this state of a consciousness, if you can call it that, state of mind, more accurate, can the few control the many on the scale that they have and do. You know, I have this thing, I just mentioned it a few minutes ago, when you go, we get so close to things, and therefore they become so normal that we never question them. Take a deep breath, take a step back, look at it again. Look at life. Someone said to me the other day, in fact, they've said to me many times over the years, similar things, what's life all about? I mean, you're born, and then you grow, you go to school, and then you go to college and they teach things and stuff, and then you get a job. Most of the time it's a job you don't like. Gives you no satisfaction, but you do it because you have to do it because you have to earn money to live and survive. And then you get older and you kind of had children and they go the same thing. And then you get even older and then your body starts to go and you start getting pains and it's more difficult and then you've got lots of health problems and stuff like that. And then you die. You know. And if you've pleased some guy with a beard or whatever, then you go to a nice place when you die, and if you haven't, ooh. And you look at it, and people don't live overwhelmingly. They exist. They stay alive between point A and point Z. And this is life. I think we can do better than that. The reason that's what life has become is because we have become people who have, who live not a life, but a program. A computer program that follows the program through what we call life. And instead of living life, we let life live us, the program live us. And the program is working all the time to keep us in a hypnotic state, because that's, as I'll come to, is basically where most people are at, in a hypnotic state. And it's incessant. Tick, tock, you are feeling sleepy. You have no power. You must serve the system. It's a mind game. It has to be a mind game because there's not enough manipulators to physically control the population, so they have to do it through mind, through perception. And through that, by the way, get the population to police each other. They put us in prisons of the mind, where we instead of expanding out to all possibility, we have these belief systems, which are nothing more than programs, computer programs, religion, politics, race, self-identity. We are all that is, has ever been, will ever be, and yet once you take on a religion, that goes zoom. Oh, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I follow Judaism, and I'm Hindu. Boom! Rules, regulations. You can't say that. You're not a Hindu if you say that. You're not a Christian if you say that. Oh, sorry, oh. And then there's politics. Oh, you're not a Republican, are you? You're not a Republican if you say that. You're not a Democrat. You're not this. You're not that. Oh, I'm a black person. I'm a Jewish person. I'm a Arab person. I'm a middle-class Englishman. That's who I am. It's my race. Boom. What is identifying? Not, experiencing being in a race and enjoying it and all that stuff. I like being an Australian and all that stuff. No problem with that. As long as you realize it's an experience. Once you identify with being the race, you are identifying with being the body, which means you're identifying with being Charlie Smith and Ethel Jones. Gotcha! Which brings us to self-identity, which is the key one. Stop them understanding who they really are, because then we're right up the Swanee. As Mark Twain said, in religion and politics, people's beliefs and convictions are in almost every case gotten at second hand, and without examination from authorities who have not themselves examined the questions at issue, but have taken them at second hand from other non-examiners whose opinions about them were not worth a brass farthing. That's how belief systems come about. The earth's not round, you're mad. By the way, if there are people here, I'm sure there must be, who've never heard my stuff before, all the very best. Because we're going to go into some very strange places before this day is out. He's just said the Queen's a lizard. He couldn't have done. He couldn't have said that. He did. Anyway, this is a great way that we're held in belief systems. Cognitive dissonance. I love this one. It's really, really important. Lying to yourself. Cognitive dissonance, for people who haven't come across it, is a state of anxiety. I've seen people in it. State of anxiety when their belief system and their experience, or what they're hearing in terms of information, are at odds. Now, cognitive dissonance is a very good thing, because when you go into this anxiety state, you can look at the information and look at the experience, realize there's more to know about your belief system, and you move on. But what most people do is the belief system's immovable, not to be touched. So what they then do is try to find ways to explain away the experience or the new information, so the belief system remains intact. And it's from cognitive dissonance that we get these incredible mind contradictions. For instance, we're going to war to fight for peace. Cognitive dissonance, classic. And George Orwell talked in his book 1984 about doublethink, which again is a form of cognitive dissonance to square the circle. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. Fighting for peace. And that's where this comes from. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. And only by persuading us to take on these contradictions and accept them as real can the few control the many. And the idea, and my goodness me, they've got so many people in this world in this state, the idea is to keep us in a total and constant state of confusion. Thinking the world is sane when it's utterly crazy. Like doctors destroying health. When you realize what the game is, when you've connected enough dots, that is not a contradiction at all anymore. It's only a contradiction when you don't know what the game is. Doctors destroy health because it's about wealth, not health. Pharmaceutical companies are not there to bring health to the population. They're there to scam them on one level for vast amounts of money. They're not interested in curing people of cancer. They're making too much money treating the symptoms in this assisted suicide we call chemotherapy. And also to so drug the population in various and many ways that, again, our ability to think straight and sharply is destroyed. This guy, William Osler, Canadian physician, he said one of the first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. I like him. I like him. I don't know why he said it, but it's true. Lawyers destroy justice. Of course they do. Because if we live in a just and fair society in which everyone is treated the same, the few do not have the privileges through law to stitch up the population and the system in general. So, of course, lawyers are there to destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Again, of course. The last thing you want, if you're the few and you want to control the many, is a sharp-thinking, intelligent, aware population. Worst bloody nightmare. So right the way through, from what we call the education system, people are not educated, they are indoctrinated with a version of life and reality and the world that suits the system to keep the few in servitude. And I feel for young people today because they are being bombarded, especially at this time of awakening, and that's no coincidence either. They're being bombarded on multi-levels to keep them asleep and to keep them from opening their minds to see the full magnitude of who they are. And all around the world, education is celebrated. Oh, yes, we're bringing education to the third world. If only. Just more indoctrination into the same global system that we're all supposed to worship. Governments destroy freedom. This is the great one. If people are new to this, this is the first big step. Governments are not there to serve the people. Governments are there to serve those that control the governments and enslave the people. That's what they're there for. Once we realize that, then a lot of dots start to connect. Men in dark suits, they're everywhere, these people. They breed. It's like luminous jackets. They're everywhere. Men in dark suits, front men for a force that I'll get into, who are running the system on behalf of those that control the system, and not for the people, which is why the decisions are against the interests of the people. It's real simple once you know what's going on. And they come from certain interbreeding bloodlines. You know, this guy is one of them. Shows what interbreeding too closely can do for you, really. Oh, Georgie. Boy, Georgie. And it just really is a confirmation of just how ludicrous this system's become and just how much control the people do not have lost. That a complete idiot can become president of the United States in the way that this man did. It says so much. You can see it down the back here at a news conference. He's got the wire, you know. Mr. President, could you answer a question? Okay, go ahead. Yeah? Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people. And neither do we. President of the United States, the so-called most powerful country in the world, and that man can become leader. And now the power of persuasion, a man who was spawned from the most corrupt political system in America, Chicago, has become the Messiah for the world in the minds of so many people. When the guy is just the political equivalent of a used car salesman come in here to sell an agenda with a smile on his face. And while we stand by and allow this to happen, our freedoms and freedom of speech is being taken away. Our ability to even interact with these people is being eradicated as we have the free speech zones and all this stuff. And an agenda to enslave humanity in the next few years in terms of its the direction it wants to go in terms of its full-scale control unfolds all the time. And these people are fundamentally responsible. Major media destroy information. If we had a mainstream media that even vaguely associated itself with the true meaning of the word journalism, none of this would be possible. But the same people that control the politicians own the media. And so the media is not there, just like governments, to serve the interests and inform the people. It is there to tell the people what those who own the media want them to believe. Write what you're told. Thanks, nation builders. We couldn't control the people without you. And no, they couldn't. And I'll say this to journalists. I said it years ago, and they laughed. And one or two of them are not laughing so much now. You and your children and grandchildren are going to have to live in the world that you're helping to bring in by just being, as one editor described journalism, just being intellectual prostitutes instead of real journalists investigating and telling real news. And then finally, religions destroy spirituality. Of course they do. Because what my father used to call bricks and mortar religion are there to sell and enslave people within a belief system, and also to create division between different belief systems called religions. So people are so focused on one belief and battling for their belief to have preeminence that they don't deep breath, take a step back, look at it again. Oh my God, I'm all that is, has been, and ever will be. Religions are not there to find spirituality, for want of a word. I'm not sure I like that word very much. They're there to stop us getting to spirituality, overwhelmingly, when you get to the top of them. So we have this crazy world, and it gets crazier. The idea is to keep us so focused on survival. It's like that mass mind control manual that came to light a few years ago called Silent Weapons for a Quiet War, how to manipulate the population. And one of the lines in it said, keep them busy, busy, busy back on the farm with the other animals. So the more you can keep us in a state of survival, more and more stress. Look, mate, you might be saying interesting things, but I live in the real world, mate. Boom. That's the idea, to keep us in that state of stress. And we're now bringing it to younger and younger people. Kids under tremendous stress to pass exams, to show how indoctrinated they are in the system. Oh, must pass your exams. Oh, my son got I've seen it on car stickers. My son got so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm very pleased for you. By the way, he got it, you didn't. This parental glory-seeking. Oh, go, you've got to pass your exams. You're going to be a banker. Your mum wants you to be a banker. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Whatever happened to life? How do you spell happy, teacher? I mean, what's all that about? Do we ever talk about that? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? You know, people, we have these measurements of success that are sold to us that we take on, and they're all about more and more and more. How many more people are this? How many more people are that? How many more people are this? How many more people have passed degrees? How many more people have got a mortgage? How many more people? And yet it's the other way that tells the real story. How few people are unfulfilled. How few people are under stress. How few people are ill. How few people are homeless. How few people are terrified of the future. These are the measurements of a success of society, surely, not more and more and more. You know, we have an economic system which I call take, make, and throw away, where the whole thing of success, it's called economic growth, is how fast you can take from the earth, turn it into things, sell more things, throw away more things, and start again. The faster you do that, the more successful you are. And we call it the cutting edge of human society. It's turning the planet into a shite hole. And we have the cleverness up to a point, although if we went to wisdom, we would find that technologically we would advance by enormous strides. But we have the cleverness through mind at the moment to create some amazing technology. Things that could make the world a better place for everybody. But we use that technology to pepper bomb cities full of civilians. We are now such at the cutting edge of human evolution that we can kill more people than ever before. And we do. We're in a world where it seems okay for children to sign their names on bombs that then drop and kill other children. Like I say, we think the world is sane. Well, we people in this room don't, but so many people do. When it is utterly insane. And what keeps people from understanding this? The constant hypnotic trance that we put in. You are feeling sleepy. Tick-tock, tick-tock. You don't want to know about pepper bombing cities? Watch this. Shut up. Quick, honey. She's going for the car. Whoa. We live in a world of plenty. And yet people starve for the want of the basics. We have food galore in some parts of the world, which comes often from the parts of the world that go hungry. And we throw away more food than most people eat in many, many months. I've seen this in Ecuador. People living on rubbish tips, waiting for the vans to come from the Western hotels to pour the rubbish food, thrown away food on, and then they go and eat for the day from it. The world that we have allowed to happen. But don't look at that. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Look at this. Shut up. Hey, quick, honey. The Steelers are going to score. Cool, yeah. I've got nothing against that. I love sport. But if we are in a situation where that becomes the focus of our reality at the exclusion of everything else, then while we're looking here, hell is going on here to stitch us up in the way that we have been. Oh, shut up. What's on the telly, honey? And then we drop bombs on the most crowded piece of land on the earth, Gaza. We protect ourselves. That's what we're doing. We do it to protect ourselves, apparently. This is what we do. This is liberation. Yay, liberation. And it's been going on. This is Vietnam. In the 20th century, humans killed well in excess of 100 million other humans in wars and conflicts. And it's still going on. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Well, you don't want to see that. Hey, quick, honey. Paris Hilton's half naked in the back of a limousine. Come and look. It's really good. And that's the new religion. Instead of living life, hey, this is me, I'm going to live my life. Ooh, isn't that she got a nice dress on? There's show, isn't she, and stuff. Oh, look, she's going to marry so-and-so. Oh, they're being divorced, yeah. It's the new religion, the celebrity, the religion of celebrity. I'm just in the supermarket. Oh, yeah, I'm getting some beans. They're up there. They don't have to shop in a supermarket because they're different. And then we have a situation where we have a system called money, which is based on money that has never, does not, and will never exist. Steps back in amazement. Say it again. I didn't quite catch that. We have become so divorced from the world that we live in that most people never ask the simple question, what is money? When you go into a bank and you ask for a loan, $50,000 or something, what does the bank do? It does nothing in terms of moving precious metal anywhere, printing money, anything. It just types into your account $50,000. And from that moment on, you start paying back interest and eventually the principal, if you're lucky, on the $50,000. Because the same people that have controlled the politicians and the governments who controlled the banks, legislation's been passed which allows banks to lend at least 10 times, and my God, it's at least 10 times, what they have on deposit. So every time you put $1 in a bank, you're giving them the right legally to lend $10 dollars. And interestingly, when you, say, take out a loan for $50,000, that $50,000 has been given to your computer screen on the basis of someone else putting a fraction of that in the bank. And then you take that $50,000 and maybe you give someone $20,000 to buy something. They'll take that $20,000, which has already been created out of nothing, and they'll put it in another bank. Now the $20,000 from the original $50,000 gives this bank the right to lend 10 times the $20,000. And so it goes on. What a bank can create out of nothing and charge interest on to the population from $1 or $100 or whatever the figure is fantastic. And we don't ask questions. I've talked to economists, who are earning cuckoo land amounts of money on the telly and stuff. I say, what is money? How is it created? They can't tell you. They never thought about it. It's just there. It's governments in here. No. It's the DNA of this society which holds this society more than anything else in so many ways, on a physical level, in servitude. Money created out of nothing, called debt, credit, which we then spend the rest of our lives paying back. But don't look at that. Don't let them know that. Tick, tick, tick. Hey, quick, honey, it's the Jerry Springer show. This man's going to punch his girlfriend. Come and look, honey. These are all the diversions, constantly. And then, of course, these people will tell you all the news that those that own the media want you to believe is true. It's what news is. And the whole foundation of all of it is be afraid, be very afraid. The big bad monster is coming as soon as we've invented him. Keep people in fear. Keep people in states of stress. And crucially, this will have implications as we go through the day, keep them in a state of surviving. Because while they're doing that, they will be in a state of focus on survival rather than looking at the big picture of what's going on. And so we've reached a point now where we really are at this fork in the road. We can go one way or we can go another, but we have to make a choice between the two, and we have to make it now. One way will take us in to a global fascist dictatorship, an Orwellian state, well within the next 10 years. When what we say, what we do, where we go, will be controlled, monitored, and imposed by a police state in every country. We're seeing it unfold by the day. The other choice is that we stop shaking in our shells or shaking in our boots. Stop keeping our heads down because we think it's easier that way. And we start to know thyself. We start to understand the full, extraordinary magnitude and genius that we really are. When you sweep away, delete the programming that has put us in the state that humanity has become. And when you reach that level, you stop taking this nonsense seriously. And when you stop doing that, it stops being intimidating to you. We're told, American word you hear so often, we're told you must comply. Compliance, that's what it is. The police state, you must comply. You must not incite discord. You must comply. Well, I have this thing, I call it the non-comply dance, you know. And that is when you start to beat to this different drum and you don't comply. You don't comply with your own enslavement. You don't comply with your own servitude. And we stop building and acquiescing to the building of our own prison. Comply! No. Do what we say? No. Your house is foreclosed. Leave. No. Hundreds of thousands of people in America, I was there for 2 months recently, hundreds of thousands of people every month are losing their homes. Now, hold on a second here. Let me just follow this round just a little bit. They're losing their homes because they've lost their jobs. They've lost their jobs because of what the banks have done. But now, because they've lost their jobs because of what the banks have done, they can't pay their mortgage to the banks, and so the banks come along and take their home when the banks have caused the problem in the first place. And hundreds of thousands of people in America are leaving their foreclosed homes every month. Why? Stay there. Refuse to leave. Then say to the system, okay, deal with that, darlings. Hundreds of thousands of people every month. You've got to come and take them out of there. Well, we can't. Of course you haven't. It's only possible for this nonsense, this grotesque injustice to happen because people acquiesce. Oh, well, we better leave. Non-compliance. Ooh, I'm inciting discord. Good. If we really look in the mirror and see the true reflection of ourselves, this system will collapse. As Martin Luther King said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. We are at that time of challenge and controversy. Where do we stand? Comply or non-compliance? Free your mind from the programming that holds us in little me. Free ourselves from the hypnotic trance we've been put in. It's a mad, 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 mad world, yes. But why? Because what has been kept from us crucially, above all else, is who we are, the nature of life, and the nature of the reality that we live in. I started out after ridiculously outrageous things happened to me about 20 years ago. The top of my head blew off, and it was I was never the same again. Thank you, God. I started to ask big questions, because unless we ask the big questions, and most people don't because we're so focused on survival and today, surviving another day, you never get the big answers, how can you? And when you ask the big questions, the world looks very different. You start to realize, for instance, that there is a multi-leveled conspiracy to enslave humanity on multi-levels, mentally, emotionally, and therefore physically. And some other questions I started to ask, and this is where I want to concentrate on in this this first section, because it's so important. Because in the second section, when I get into the conspiracy as it's unfolding today in our everyday lives, that will start to make so much more sense in terms of why society is as it is, why it's structured as it is, why things are done as they are, once we realize what reality is. Who are we? Where are we? What is reality? What is life? How many people in the world actually ask that in their entire lifetimes until they get towards the end, maybe? And when you ask those questions, you realize it's all an illusion. This physical world that we take so seriously, that we think is so real, is just an illusion decoded by our body computer system to give the illusion of solidity. Great American comedian Bill Hicks, who said this: all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. Encapsulates it. And really, the bottom line of the conspiracy is to manipulate our imagination of ourselves so that we imagine ourselves to be little me and powerless, and therefore controllable by the few. It's all an illusion. It sounds crazy to start with, but for the one and only time in my life in 2003 in the Brazilian rainforest, I took this psychoactive rainforest plant called Aweosme. And some people have a bad experience. I had a fantastic experience. For 5 hours, this female voice, it took the theme of, or the expression of, this female voice, as loud as mine is now, talked to me for 5 hours about the nature of reality and how it was all an illusion, explaining why it was all an illusion. And it was hilarious. I mean, my feet were literally in the air a number of times. It was so funny, because it is funny when you realize what we take seriously. And I came back after that, and I started looking in the scientific area and quantum physics and all this stuff to see if I could support what that voice had said from the mainstream science and the cutting edge of science. And I found that you could do it easily. Why? Because science is a series of disciplines, vast numbers of disciplines, and the buggers never talk to each other. They don't connect their own dots within science. Why? Because they're not encouraged to. Indeed, the opposite from encouraged to, because once they connect the dots, woo, this is life then. And when you do connect the dots, you realize that if they did, they'd already realized that this reality is an illusion. I talked in London in May last year, and a friend of mine who is a healer and he's a scientist and he works in scientific circles, and he'd done this presentation or been at this event at the Royal Society, like the holy grail of science, mainstream science in London. And he's met all these people, and he comes to my talk, right? You know, I mean, I left school at 15 to play soccer. You know, I never passed an exam in my life. Thank you, God. Okay, so, and he met 4 or 5 of these guys who'd been at the Royal Society, mainstream scientists, and he said, what the hell are you doing here? And they said, well, we've come to hear it how it really is. Because they bloody knew this. But if they talked about it within their science, within their discipline, within their arena, the funding stops, the ridicule starts, and they no longer are able to progress within the mainstream science. Why? Why do you want to? Follow what is. So, all the time we are decoding reality in an apparently solid three-dimensional way. This is an amazing guy. You might have seen some of these on the internet. This is an amazing guy who draws chalk pictures on the pavement, and all the pictures you're going to see are on a flat pavement. But because of the way he draws them, he gets the brain to decode them in a three-dimensional form. He's tricking the brain into doing this. These are all on flat pavements. Incredible guy, what he does. And here's another example. Because the brain is decoding reality, and you can manipulate that, and that's another big thing of the conspiracy, which I'll get to. All these things are optical illusions, tricking the brain to read reality in a certain way, and it can be done on a very deep level, and it is. Again, is that a 7-section box, or is it or image, or is it a box, or what is it? It depends how your brain reads it. Most people seeing this for the first time will read that as a bird in the bush. Actually, it says a bird in the bush. Because the brain is used to certain things, you can drop things in that are there, but it doesn't read them because it reads according to the program that it's taken on. These kind of red colors are exactly the same, but because of their relationship to other colors, the brain reads them differently, and they appear to be not the same, but they are. As Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And the reason for its persistence will become clear before we finish this first section. So I followed this amazing synchronicity that suddenly appeared in my life 20 years ago. And it took me through the 5 sense level of this and how secret societies connect and all that stuff. I'll get into that in the second section. And then it took me through interdimensional stuff. And eventually, from 2003 onwards, with that ayahuasca thing, right up to the present day, the whole focus of where my life has gone is the nature of reality and who we are and all that stuff. Because this is the place where the key to open the door is. And, you know, it's great that that there are all this conspiracy research going on the level of, you know, engineered wars and stuff and backgrounds to Obama. It's very important that we know this. But if we only do that, then we're just learning more and more and more about our own prison. This stuff can show us how to open the door, open the cell door. So when you ask the question, where are we? We're in a virtual reality universe. In so many ways now, technology, although on a far more basic level, is starting to mirror the reality we're actually experiencing. I saw this cartoon. I thought it was very apt. The universe is amazing, isn't it, Captain? It's very mysterious. A lot of things we don't know about, like dark matter, dark energy, multiverses. System error, reboot, reloading universe. We know less than you think. And although that's a kind of simple kind of analogy, that is basically what we're looking at, a virtual reality universe of incredible sophistication compared with the virtual reality that we have in this world now, but the theme is just the same. Even in this comparatively Stone Age level of virtual reality that we're in at the moment, things are getting more and more sophisticated, and the quality of the images are getting more and more advanced. And if we keep going on this level into the far distance, as we perceive distance and perceive future, we'd end up with something like this eventually. This guy here, part of him is the real him, part of him is the virtual reality him. And again, the theme is just the same. Our virtual reality is getting more and more. I mean, there's more and more virtual reality simulations to teach people how to do things. Films like this stuff to help soldiers train and all that stuff, and flying simulations. And this is in a hospital where they put people on a virtual reality system when they're treating their burns, and the virtual reality is feeding them things that are images that are very cold, which the brain is reading and decoding, and it makes the pain of the dressing, etc., far less than it would be, because the brain's not decoding this to the extent that it would, because it's also decoding the opposite to it through the virtual reality. And what is virtual reality? These games. You have the goggles that use the eyes sense. You have the gloves that use the touch sense. The virtual reality games that we are using, and the more advanced ones, are simply mirroring reality. They're mirroring the five senses and using the five senses. Because what the five senses are doing is receiving vibrational information. It's what they do. I mean, the ear is the obvious one with sound, but they're all receiving vibrational information, turning it into electrical signals, another form of the same information, passing it to the brain, which then decodes that into the world we think is out there, but actually this only exists in here. We talk about space and distance, but when you look into the night sky and you see all those stars, all those lights from stars are where they used to be, anyway, and they seem so far away, and yet the only place they exist in that form is in our decoding system that turns them into an apparent physical world. So that's where the world exists. Imagine if you're the few and you know that, and you keep that understanding from the population, and you know that all you've got to do is manipulate the population's decoding system, and they will experience the reality you've manipulated them to decode. That's what's going on. That's why it's kept from us the true nature of the reality we're living in, because then we become controllable. This is absolutely right in the Matrix. This isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, taste, and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. That's what it is. The world we think is out here only exists in here. And that is a fundamental revelation to understanding how the few control the many. On one level, this reality is digital. It's a digital reality on one level. It's vibrational on another one. There's many levels of it. And it's a decoded world in terms of its physicality. The body is a computer. A biological computer. By biological, I mean it has the ability to think for itself. It's not that it's just reacting to data in the way that it's programmed to react to data. It has the ability to think for itself, certainly up to a point. And the key level of the conspiracy is to get us to believe that we are the computer and therefore forget that we are that which is working through the computer. Consciousness. False identity. So, who are we? Big question. We think we're humans. We think we are Joe Bloggs and Bill Jones. But that's an experience. What we call human is an experience. It's not who we are. We are consciousness, energy, consciousness, having the experience. This is the vehicle to experience this reality. If I want to experience Radio 1, I have to get a vehicle, a radio, that is tuned to Radio 1. Otherwise, I can't access and experience it. Same with this reality. Our consciousness is vibrating too fast. Eventually, if you go high enough within consciousness, not vibrating at all. But it's vibrating too fast to interact. I couldn't pick this up. My consciousness couldn't pick this up because the difference between this frequency and my consciousness is too great. So we take on a vehicle which is vibrating within the frequency range of this reality, and then I can interact with it. They've kidded us that the vehicle is who we are. And that's why we see ourselves in such limited terms. We are multi-level consciousness. Extraordinary, infinite genius. On the lower levels of this multi-level consciousness, it's actually photographable now. Through things like Kirlian photography and such techniques. We are energy. And this is my mum. She died a few years ago. And I had this experience on the day of the funeral, which really gave me this profound insight into who we are. Funny enough, I got to my age a few years ago. I'd never seen a dead body ever. Just never been my experience. But my brother said to me, "Would you like to see your mother in the open coffin in the funeral parlor?" And my immediate reaction was, "No, I don't need to see that. I remember her as she was. She's consciousness anyway." But then something said to me, "Go, go, go." And this intuitive level, which says things like that, I never deny because it's taken me into so many amazing places I wouldn't have gone otherwise. And I went. And there was my mother in this open coffin, and it sounds saying the obvious, but that body was dead. I've never seen anything so dead in my life. It was completely lifeless. And next to it was this picture, a massive blown up picture, which my brother was going to put in the funeral service. And I'm stood there and I'm looking at this dead body. And I'm looking at this picture, and this picture's alive, because photographs can pick up the energy of us, as well as just the physical. And the sparkle, the energy that's coming off that picture was not coming off that body. The energy that's coming off that picture and not off that body, that is what had left. And that's why there's such a lifeless thing was left behind, the computer. That's all it was. That life force is who we are. And you see this and experience this through people who have what we call near-death experiences. When they leave the body dies, and then the body's revived, and they find themselves back in the body, and often they talk about going through the tunnel and all the rest of it. And this is what one near-death experiencer said about what he experienced in that out-of-body state. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That is who we really are. That's who we really are, and that's what this conspiracy, in its bottom foundation level, is seeking to and must to prosper, keep from us. And that's why this knowledge is so suppressed through the ages, and religion has played a massive part in suppressing this. We think we're the body, but it's the vehicle. Einstein said, this delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from the prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. In other words, once we lose the idea that we are individual little me and realize we are all that is, we start to connect again with all that is, and not just with a few people around us who connect into our sense of individuality and Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith. Any picture of this theme, this type, is from a guy called Neil Haig. He's a great friend of mine in England, an artist, and he's a very, very original artist. And he has this unbelievable ability to not quite read my mind, because I do explain what I want and what I'd like him to portray and stuff, but he has this wonderful ability to then deliver a picture, and I go, crikey, if I was an artist, and I'm shite, I would draw it exactly like that. That's what was in my mind. It's an amazing connection that we seem to have. And this is the difference, a real important difference that I want to make. Okay, again, it's all words and it's how they're defined. I'm going to define the words for this day. Consciousness is the word I'm using for what we really are. All that is, has been, ever will be. And consciousness has an experience within this reality if it chooses to. However, as I said about we must take on a shell and all that stuff to interact with this reality, it's very similar to if you want to go on the internet, you can't just sit there in a chair on an empty desk and go on the internet. You need a conduit, you need an interface through which you can access that collective reality we call the World Wide Web, and it's called a computer. What consciousness does is exactly the same in a fantastically more sophisticated way. It takes on what I call the biological computer, the body, as its interface. And the body and its immediate energy field, I'm calling the mind. And the is very important. Because for me, the more that I kind of start to understand this, we talk about my mind, your mind, his mind, her mind. No, I would say that's not how it is. It's the mind. The mind is the interface between consciousness and this reality. And you can be a Wall Street banker over here and a New Ager over there and still be in the same mind. And what the conspiracy is about, in its primal level, is pulling us and our point of perception into the vehicle, into the interface, the mind, and out of consciousness. And what's happening now, and I'll get into this in the last section, is there are changes taking place vibrationally in this reality, which is helping people to open their minds to consciousness, and therefore people are, as we say, waking up from mind into consciousness. And the moment we start to do that, bang, we see the world in a completely different way. Why? Because our point of perception, our point of observation moves out of mind into consciousness. And the mind is a very good thing, because we can use that to interact with this reality. And the mind operates through something called thought, which is a very, very low level of perception. Consciousness operates through something I call knowing. It's all knowing. It's all that is, has been, and ever will be. Therefore, it's not constantly working things out. That's why when you enter a state of consciousness, you go into a place of silence. When you're stuck in mind or interacting with mind, that's what the chatter is all the time. The mind never shuts bloody hell up. Whereas you go into consciousness and there's silence. Why? We live in a world of things. And everything seems to be things. We live in a world of noise, constant noise now. But that's not the prime reality, though we think it is. The prime reality is consciousness, which is silence. It's silence because it doesn't have to work things out, because it knows. And we think silence is nothing. So we say, can you hear anything? No. Nothing. No. Nothing. And yet, everything comes out of the silence and goes back into the silence, because what consciousness is at its highest level is all possibility, all potential. And in the silence is all potential, all possibility. And then when I start talking, I'm pulling through sound one possibility out of all possibility, and now through the senses, now I'm in one possibility. So when we have silence, and I start talking, the noise comes out of the silence, and as soon as I stop talking, the noise goes back into the silence. And it's the same with space. With space, what is space? It's no thing. The reality here is things. But what defines this theater? As much as the things, the seats and the ceilings, what defines it is the no-thing. And in the realm of things, things come out of the no-thing. And then they go back. That's what's happening when we die. We're born out of the no-thing into the world of things, and then the body goes back into no-thing. And one of the things that stresses people out, if we could come to terms with it, would be a lot more helpful, is we're always trying to find stability and permanence in a world of things, when the world of things is, by very definition, totally impermanent. The permanence is the no-thing, the silence, consciousness, which is what we always will be. And so when we come in to the mind, if we come in and hold that connection to consciousness, then we're in this world and we can use the mind to interact with it, but our point of observation is beyond it. And therefore we see things from this point of view. We become observers rather than caught in it. If we lose contact with consciousness, we come into this reality and we become prisoners of the mind in that eggshell. And now we're in this world and of it. And if we are in that state, we're not getting our inspiration and our knowingness from consciousness and getting a fix on who we are and the nature of reality. So where do we get it from? Through the five senses. And who's controlling that information? Those that control the media, those that control education, those that program one generation called parents, who then program the next generation thinking they're doing the best for their kids. And so we have this mind-controlled society which is unconscious. Consciousness is like the ocean, the everything. Mind, of course, is a form of consciousness because everything is, but it's a much more concentrated and static and limited form of consciousness that we call mind and thought. And we call it intellect too. It's funny. Well, it's not just funny. It's kind of explains why we live in a society that worships the intellect. Oh, he's got a great mind. Oh, he's mindless. Ooh, look at him. We worship the mind. We worship the intellect. We reward intellect. And we laugh and ridicule at those who come from a position of consciousness, because intellect literally cannot get its mind round the perceptions and perspectives of consciousness, because that's not where it's coming from. Let's just do that again. So if we open the mind, and all these phrases we use, and they're so, we're spouting these classic truths all the time. When we open our mind and let consciousness in, the mind becomes a servant to consciousness and not the governor of our perception. And that's the state that more and more people are starting to get into, and therefore their perception of reality is transforming in an amazing way all around the world. I've been to nearly 50 countries now. I think it's 48 or something like that. I tell you what, this awakening's happening everywhere. And the question is, are we going to be consciousness or are we going to be mind? Are we going to come from a perspective in our daily existence of being all that is or little me? That's the difference between being free and being enslaved by these silly people in dark suits and those behind them. This guy, Ramana Maharshi, was an Indian guy. I went to the place where he did this once a few months ago. And he spent most of his life just meditating. I mean, that's an option. It's not something I choose to do, but it's an option. I mean, we can do that. And what it did was help him see the difference between mind and consciousness. And he said, mind is consciousness which has put on limitations. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later you take on limitations and become the mind. Perfect. That's what we do. So we can start to see, and I'll get more into this in the last section, we can start to see how we can turn this bloody key and open this door, which you can't do unless you get into these deep levels of understanding the nature of reality. And Einstein said, a human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feeling as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. And that's exactly what it is, an optical delusion. So it's not just freeing our mind, it's freeing ourself from mind, or freeing ourself from the domination of mind on our sense of perception. And, you know, all the way through what we call history, these basic truths have been repeated. It's nothing new, it's just we're getting more to understand them in the mainstream. We have these vortex systems called chakras, wheels of light, the word means, which connect us into the energy level of us from the body computer. And the key connection is through what we call the heart chakra here. So people talk about love and they symbolize the physical heart. Actually, that comes from originally from this heart vortex, the understanding that this is the seat of connection to consciousness. There are other connections as well, like the right side of the brain, which I'll get to shortly. But the heart is a key connection. And it's the difference between the head and the heart is the difference between thought, particularly left brain thought, which is what most people are stuck in, and intuitive, the word again, knowing. How many times do we just know that we've got to go somewhere, that we know we ought to do this, that we know we really ought to do that? And this is going, you can't do that, you've got a mortgage, you've got a cat, what will your mother think, what will the people on the bar think? And it's talking this out, oh yeah, okay. And the thing that changed my life 20 years ago, dramatically, is when I made one decision. Every time my head and my intuitive knowing are at odds, I'm going with this, every time. And what happens, and it happened with me, when you follow this, you can get in some interesting situations in this world of head when you're coming from another point of perception. And this is going, see, told you what happened if you didn't listen to me, there you go. But if you keep with it, eventually your life becomes this synchronistic journey which takes you to places that you want to go. And after a while, this observes and it goes, hold on a second, you might get into some scrapes when you follow this, but it all works out in the end. And it all works out not because or despite the scrapes you got into, but because of them. And at that point, the head and the heart come into alignment and you think and feel the same thing. The war ends that most people are in. The heart has its own energy field. There's far more to the heart, even the physical heart, than ever people have understood, even genetically. And when I'm talking about love, I'm not talking about I love you, saw you down the disco, darling, not that. I'm talking about a level of love that you really have to experience because there's no words to describe it. And when I was in that ayahuasca state, the opening line of this female voice was, the only thing you really need to know is infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. In other words, the existence of one infinite consciousness, that's the only truth. Everything else is illusion. It's the manifestation and manifestations of that consciousness in many and various ways. But the manifestations are the illusion. The consciousness is the base reality of everything. And one of the line from one of my books, love is not something you're in, it is something you are. That's the difference. It's interesting, I've talked to people who work in mind control and stuff, or used to, and they tell me that if you stimulate a certain part of the brain, you can get anyone to fall in love with anyone, as long as you stimulate their part of the brain as well. You'll get this attraction. It's electrochemical attraction. We call it love. It's actually attraction. Love is something beyond what we perceive to be love in this world. And when we close the heart, and fear and stress and all that stuff close the heart chakra very, very powerfully, that's when we end up. And also fear of being different means fear of following the heart intuition because of what people will say about you because you're acting in ways that are different. And that's that puts us in these eggshells. And when we open the heart, we're dealing with a level of love, call it cosmic love, unconditional love. There are many descriptions for it, but it's love that you have to feel to understand what it is. And I'm sure many people in this room have, although it's fleeting within the world sometimes that we experience. And when we open up, then we connect with all that is, and then we start to access levels of intuitive awareness that start to make the complex world of things and apartness become, whoa, that's how it goes together then. And without that, we're just lost in confusion, lost in the world of mind, which sees everything in apartness. I was in the bath last year, because I have one occasionally, and I'm sitting there with me duck or whatever, and don't know what I was doing. And I got this real clear picture in my mind from nowhere. First of all, there was this billowing energy, which I took to be consciousness. Why, I don't know, but that's what came. And then an eye appeared in this energy. And then in front of the eye came a telescope. And at the end of the telescope was this world, this earth and this universe and all the rest of it. And then the telescope morphed into a human body. And I got Neil Haig to paint it for me. And that's so symbolic of what we experience in this reality. We are experiencing a certain kind of experience with this reality gives to us. And there's nothing wrong with the experience. It's fine. I mean, it's an experience. But what the body does is it telescopes us into a certain range of frequencies and therefore perception. And through the body, we see the world in a very different way. Now, we can use the telescope, the body, knowing that it's a telescope, in which case we've got consciousness and we've got the telescopic, if you like, apartness experience. But when consciousness is no longer connected, we're just left with a telescopic view of everything. And that's why we see things in such narrow terms all the time when we cease to be consciousness. And the energy field, or the energy of we are, connects into the body through things like the endocrine system and the pineal gland, which people connect to the third eye of psychic sight and all the rest of it. And that's how we connect into the computer. We have an auric field, and the lower auric field in the body, that's what I call body awareness, because the body is not just what we call a physical body, it's also an energy field. And together, that's what I will refer to as the mind. And it's interesting, when you put an electrical charge through a wire, it throws out a magnetic field, an electromagnetic field. And of course, this is now well known, down the central nervous system through what we call the crown chakra, right down through and out the base chakra, there is energy, electrical energy going through all the time, and it throws out this electromagnetic field. That together, I would suggest, is what we call mind. And it's the same with the earth. For reasons I'll get to in this section, everything is a mirror of everything else. Same thing happens with the earth. You have that electromagnetic charge, which becomes the energy field of the earth. Now, when we open this auric field and connect to the wider levels of consciousness, then we have everything we need. But the way the world is manipulated, coldly and calculatedly, is designed to close that auric field so that we operate only in that level of awareness that I call the mind. And that's how the few control the many. And when we operate within the mind, we basically go round and round and round in what we call life, following the programs of the mind. Because the body is a biological computer, and it can be programmed to take on certain perceptions of reality. And the ones that we're programmed to take on because of the manipulation are ones of limitation, of I can't, little me, I have no power. And that's how we get infinite consciousness into a state of believing that it is impotent. But of course, if the few are going to control the many, that has to happen. Otherwise, they can't do it. So this fork in the road that we're now facing, you know, it takes many expressions. Am I going to get involved and do something about this, or am I going to run away? Yes, but at the foundation level, it's, am I going to go with my head? Am I going to stay in mind? Or am I going to go with my heart and go into consciousness? Ideally, a balance of the two, but that's the choice, and this has to be the governor, and this the servant. In most people, this is the governor, and that's why we have the world that we live in. We live in a world of mind. Pope John Paul II said the worst prison would be a closed heart. I must say the irony of someone from the Roman Catholic Church saying that is not lost, but I do take the point. And the heart is the key. The key to opening that auric field so consciousness and mind start to work together. And my God, what a different world we'd live in if we went from that state that we're in now. And so what we're looking at among billions of people are people entrapped in mind. And because of the way the mind perceives reality as everything is apart and not connected, and it sees things in complexity instead of the connection of everything, we are in a situation where we are a manipulator's party trick when we're in that state. And one of the key ways that we are disconnected from consciousness is when and we're encouraged to do it all the time again, you know, how many times again do we use these relationships to time in words and reality? I used to find it, when I was in mind, like everyone else gets caught in mind, I was trying to work out years and years and years ago this thing that there was no time. I knew intuitively there was no time, but this, I couldn't get my bloody head around that bugger. But now it's so bloody obvious that there is no time. There is only one place, there is only one time, and that's what is become known as the now. And the now is where consciousness is. Because consciousness operates in the now, a state of no time, if we can be pulled into a connection to time and past, present, and future, by definition, we are already disconnecting from consciousness, because that's in a state of no time, and suddenly our perception has gone into a state of time. How many people, and I'm talking about myself this over the years too, big time. How many of us, we don't live in the now. We live in the past, what we perceive the past. If only, what if, oh my God, oh, what I did. And we live in the future, which is a projection. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh, gotta. Oh my goodness me, what's going to happen about the future? Oh my God. We're pulled in our terms of our focus of perception and experience, second by second, using time language again, into the past and into the future. And in doing so, we get pulled out of consciousness, which is no time, the now. And yet, you say to people, okay, the past. You keep going on about the past. Where's the past? Where is it? And they say, well, it's the past. No, where is it? Where is it located? And people go on about the future, and you go, okay, fine. Well, where is the future? Where is it? Where is it located? This is the fact. The only place that exists, the only time that exists is the now. The only moment that you can change anything is in the now, because it's all that exists in reality once we peel back the illusion. When we are thinking about the past memory, where are we when we're thinking about the past? In the now, the only place we can be. Where are we when we're thinking about and fearing the future? We're in the now, the only place we can be. And by pulling us into the past and the future in our perception, which is just a memory and a projection, we're pulled out of the only moment that we can actually change anything, the now. And that's where consciousness is, because that's where consciousness lies, in the now. As John Lennon said brilliantly in a song, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And we're busy making other plans here, just a projection, and here, just a memory. And we don't live in the moment, which is the only moment that we can change anything. So once we get pulled into this time, and again, I've got a watch on because we have a time situation today, which I want to keep to, although I think I'll go over because I've got so much to say. But we're in a time situation. So, but in acknowledging that there is a time illusion, you can still be in the now while still accepting that there's a time illusion, because you know it's an illusion, and therefore it doesn't pull you into past and future. It's like that near-death experience has said. There is no time, there is no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation of distance, of period, of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. At that moment, that person was in the now. And the conspiracy wants to pull us out of that all the time. All the time, time. How many times do we say time? The whole of this society is based on time. What's the time? I haven't got the time. Have you got the time? Oh, I'm running out of time. Oh, God, is that the time? How much time do I have? It's all, and when we really, it's one of the things, you know, it's like, you know, when you're in the street and you haven't noticed something, and then someone will say to you, hey, have you seen that new car that's just come out? And you'll go, no. And they'll go, oh, there's one, look. And from that moment on, you keep seeing this bloody new car all over the place. You never seen it before, never noticed it, because you bring it into the conscious. You bring it out of the subliminal into the conscious. And when you start to look at some of these things, you realize just how much time and a sense of time dominates the society, and that pulls us out of the now. It pulls us out of consciousness, unless we recognize it's an illusion. All the time, we're watching the clock. And in the now, there's no time. And when we're in mind, there is a perception of time, not time itself. As William Blake, a great British writer, said, to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. Everything is in the now. And, you know, you can symbolize it in a way when you're passing across a computer disc or a DVD, you're watching a movie, and the movie bits that you've watched, the scenes you've watched, your perception is the past. The bits you've not yet watched are your perception of the future, but the only thing that you're experiencing and can experience on that DVD is the now, and that's where that laser is reading at that moment, and that's what we're doing without realizing it. And that's why I wrote a book years ago, a few years ago now, not that many, called Tales from the Time Loop, and it was to symbolize this round and round situation we get, following time, thinking we're going from past through present to future, when there is only one now. And that is where consciousness lies, and that's where we can access it in its true magnitude. So the body is a biological computer. It has the ability to think for itself, and the idea is to get us to believe that is who we are. I call it a genetic spacesuit. You know, if you're going to experience the moon or another planet, you need an outer shell. If you're going to experience this reality, consciousness needs an outer shell. And that's what makes racism so utterly insane. You know, it's like we're all one consciousness having different experiences. And what if you had a couple of spacemen on the moon, and one said that he didn't like this spaceman because he had a green spacesuit that was made in a different company to this spacesuit that was a red spacesuit or a white spacesuit? You'd say, bang their bloody heads together, don't be so stupid, it's just a bloody spacesuit. Well, that's what we do when we get caught in racism. Racism is identifying, it's one of the classic, most profound ways that confirm that you are identifying reality with the vehicle, the computer, and not with consciousness, which is who you are. We are all one consciousness. This is the irony. I don't care if you're bloody Jewish or black or middle class or white American, we're all the same consciousness. Ultimately, if you go high enough, having different experiences. And we get divided and ruled by self-identity with this. That's what racism is. Utterly bloody stupid. Now, humans. What are humans? Humans are software programs. Different software programs running through the body computer. We say these things, I'm only human. No, you're not. That's an experience you're having. It's the vehicle's program which manifests as what we call the human body and the human being. Software program. This is in the San Francisco Chronicle, an article on DNA. DNA is a universal software code. From bacteria to humans, the basic instructions for life are written with the same language. It's all a computer game of great sophistication, and this is part of it. And the difference between a mouse and a human in DNA code terms is fractional compared with a difference in the way the body manifests. DNA is made up of 4 codes, A, C, G, and T. I think I'm made up of G and T and G and T, me, but there you go. A, C, G, and T. And these different codes, how they relate to each other decides how the physical form manifests, whether it's a wolf or an ant or a virus or a human being. And it's interesting how the codes on the computer's screens in the Matrix movie, which was very, very close to reality, not totally, but very close to reality in so many ways, very illustrative of the way we decode reality into an illusory physical state. But I'm quite right, those codes were very much like the DNA codes in so many ways, because on one level, this reality, like I say, is digital. And I'll get to that as we go along. Now, what they're doing now, of course, is having what they call computer-brain interfaces, where they're connecting computers to the brain, and the brain is working the computer without hands being used. And the reason they can do that is quite simple. They're connecting 2 computer systems. One extraordinarily more sophisticated than the other, but still the same in theme. The human body ticks box after box after box in terms of a highly sophisticated computer system. When your computer gets a virus and you start to see a problem, it maybe slows down or whatever. And as the virus gets more and more a hold of the computer, I've had this done to me, eventually the computer won't even switch on anymore. And what do we say? Hey, my computer's dead. And what happens at what we call human death is the computer shuts down and who we are leaves. Eternal consciousness leaves. Our computers go into sleep mode where it shuts everything down and everything just ticks over. That's what we do. Our computer shuts down and ticks over. We call it sleep. Although I have to say, I didn't get any last night. Crikey. I can't get out of British time. I've been here a week. And the bad news is, this is the time I should be asleep. So, I'll do my best. Norton antivirus and all these antivirus things, what do? They protect the computer from external attacks, viruses and what have you. And that's what the human immune system does in an extraordinarily more sophisticated way. Protects the computer system, the body computer system, from attacks. And just with computer antivirus systems, if a new virus comes out, which it's not programmed to repel, then the computer gets completely taken over. This is what happens with the human computer system, antivirus system, which is why when the Europeans went to North America, they took with them smallpox, which the Native Americans had not encountered before, and bingo, they fell like flies because their antivirus system, their immune system, couldn't cope. On the left is well, my left, your left, yeah, my right, is a picture taken at the Necker Hospital in Paris when they put a tracer dye into the acupuncture points of the body, and they photographed it, the meridian system, etc. And I looked at that when someone showed it to me, and it reminded me immediately of a motherboard, which is basically what that meridian system is. It's energy, and that energy is information. Everything in this reality is information in various forms: vibrational information, digital information, electrical information, being decoded. That's how the whole thing comes together and manifests. And what they found is that when this energy, which the Chinese in acupuncture call qi, is going around this system too slowly, from optimum, people manifest some kind of illness or dis-ease. Why? Because the qi is information, and if the information is not passing around quick enough, then the body computer does not function as it should. When a computer on your desktop gets a virus, what's the first thing that people say most often? Hey, my computer's slow, because the information's not passing around as it should. And what acupuncture does is put the acupuncture needles in to manipulate the flow of this energy, bring it back to optimum, and therefore physical health. In a computer, the central processing unit, the CPU, is the processor of information, the information traffic. What they call in computer parlance the CPU is the brain of the computer. Very appropriate, because this is our CPU, which is constantly filtering and dealing with the information traffic, passing it around the body, information, receiving information back from different parts of the body, and it is responding according to the information that we're receiving. And that's how we stay healthy. That's how, in optimum terms, we think straight and we have balanced emotions. If you intervene into that process, you can manipulate people mentally, emotionally, and physically. So in the end, it's all about the way we are decoding reality into this physical world which only exists in our head. And you can intervene into that, like I say. The DNA, the genetic structure in general, is like the hard drive that holds the base information and takes on more information as you experience. And like I say, it's not just the physical level, there's an energetic level. In fact, the body's just energy, really. But there's an energetic level, and together, that forms the body-computer entity. And what we call races, cultures, and all these different expressions of the human family, they are just software programs, which we have to experience. And the software programs are very clear when you get into some of this stuff. This guy is called William Sheridan. And he was in a New York hospital waiting for a heart transplant. And to take the time as he was waiting, he joined an art therapy class. And he was, like me, a rubbish artist. And that's the kind of stuff he was drawing, at best at the top. And then he had this heart transplant, and as he was recovering, he went back to the art therapy course, and he started producing much more sophisticated drawings. And he eventually met the mother of the man whose heart he was given, and asked the obvious question, because no one could explain what had happened, including the art therapist lady, who was bewildered by the difference. He asked the mother if the donor had any interest in art, and she said, interest? He wanted art materials more than toys by the age of 18 months. He was crazy about art. And there's a doctor in America who's done a major study on this, of how when people receive transplanted organs, and again, the heart is the most obvious in this, the most powerful in this, but other organs too, like the lungs, people have in significant numbers taken on the aptitudes and the personalities, or personality traits, of the donor. Why? Because it's a download, in a sense. You are taking information, energetic information. We decode it as physical, but it's energetic information, and you're putting it into, downloading it into another computer, and that information then becomes available to that computer and starts to affect the way that it perceives reality. My great friend in Africa, Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman who's closing in on 90 now, he said to me, I talked to him about this, he said in the days of Africa when there was cannibalism, he said they had a golden rule that you must always boil the person to a certain temperature, otherwise if you eat them, you become them. It's an old African kind of rule, because it's information. And nothing identifies us more, I guess, with being the body computer as opposed to it being an experience than being a man or a woman. That's who we are. I'm a man or a woman. No, it's the experience we're having. Very big difference. And there's nothing wrong with being a man or a woman. It's an experience. Nothing wrong with it at all. And, all the best with it, except that we need to understand it's an experience, and then don't get caught in the fact that it's who we are. A few years ago now, about 2, 3, 4 years ago, in England, there was a story in all the papers of Freaky the chicken. Freaky the chicken started out as a hen laying eggs, and then had this massive, for some reason, burst of testosterone produced, and started growing a comb, started crowing at dawn, and chasing the hens. And all that had happened is there had been a chemical change in the computer, and Freaky went from a woman to a man. And of course, you see this in the manipulation of sex change operations and stuff like that. If what we are is a man or a woman, how can the body computer change from one to the other with a chemical change? It's not who we are, it's an experience. I saw this on the BBC website. Scientists have been able to take control of flies' brains to make females behave just like males. Researchers genetically modified the insects so that a group of brain cells that control sexual behavior could be switched on by a pulse of light. The team was able to get female fruit flies to produce a courtship song, behavior usually seen only in males. Again, it's the computer being manipulated. When I'm writing sometimes, I get up early in the morning in England, and when the sun comes up, the birds start singing. As soon as the sun comes up, the birds start singing. Now, is there someone with a baton saying cue? They just start singing. I mean, here we have Freaky the chicken. When he sort of got the testosterone burst, he starts crowing at dawn. Who told him? No, the computer program was running. Just crowed at dawn. Another thing that we have, look at the time, another thing we have, are we doing all right, is emotions. We are our emotions. So many people who have near-death experiences, and I've read a lot about this, and I've talked to a number of them, they say that when we left the body, we did not feel emotion in the way that we did in the body. Because emotion is a chemical, as a chemical expression. And chemicals can, if they're introduced to the body, can affect our emotional state. There was a woman in England a few years ago who, story again in all the papers, 40 years ago, out of nowhere, she went into a clinical depressive state. 40 years, in and out of institutions. After 40 years, which is why she was in the papers, someone said to her, can you think of anything that happened about the time that this started? And she said, the only thing I could think of, she said, is I had 19 tooth fillings with mercury. So she was advised to get the mercury taken out, which she did, and go on a mercury detox, and the depression disappeared as fast as it came, and never to return. I've just found myself again, she said. Now, if you'd have said to her over that 40 years, who are you? She'd say, I'm a manic depressive. No, no. The body-computer system had malfunctioned because of the chemicals introduced to it. And so often we identify who we are with things that we appear to be in terms of our behavior, when actually it's just the body-computer program playing out. It's not who we are at all. Good habits, bad habits. How many times are good habits, bad habits, and all this stuff actually coming from the computer program, not from us? Does consciousness do good habits and bad habits? I'm not sure it does. So the way we decode reality depends to a very large extent on the state of the body computer. And the way that we live our lives depends on the way we identify who we are. And bringing this computer thing down to the brain, the brain has two hemispheres, the right brain and the left brain, with this corpus callosum bridge connecting the two. And they have very, very different roles to play in terms of reality. The left brain is where most people in this world live. It's where the education system is fundamentally designed, cold, calculatedly designed to put us. And that is the part of the brain that perceives everything as a part, that deals in language, that deals in structure. And if you look at the society that we live in, it is a left brain structured society because it is structured by left brain dominated people. When you go through the education system, the indoctrination system, what happens? You progress within it by taking information, overwhelmingly left brain information, words and numbers, holding it in there and then regurgitating it out onto an exam paper. And the better you do that, the more you progress within the system. And if you're really good at that, you go to big universities, and then if you get really good at that again, you get good degrees, and you go into your specialization, science, the law, often politics, and things like that, medicine. And then you go through it in your specialization, in your exams, same thing. And then the top ones progress into those positions of society that control the institutions of medicine and science and all the rest of it. And to have got there, they have to have become left-brain prisoners as a result of the system they've been through. The right brain is about connection out into the greater self. It's where we get creativity from and inspiration from. That's where the artist resides. Artistic people and creative people are much more right brain than most, and that's where they get the creativity from, because it connects them out into that realm of infinite creativity and potential. The idea, as with consciousness and mind, and this is very much symbolic of that, is to have that corpus callosum bridge passing information between the two so you get the best of both. That's not what the system wants. It doesn't want right-brain people. And to give you an example of the difference between the two, get my glasses on. This is a lady called Jill Bolte Taylor. She is a neuroanatomist, brain scientist for short. And she had an incredible experience in 1996 where she had a stroke, where she stayed conscious for a large amount of time while it was going on. And it was a stroke, a hemorrhage in the left brain. And being a neuroanatomist, she was able to follow the experience like most people would not be able to because of her knowledge. And this is her story. She said she got up, wasn't feeling too great, jumped onto my exercise machine, she said, and I'm jamming away on this thing, and I'm realizing that my hands look like primitive claws grasping onto the bar. I thought, that's very peculiar. And I looked down at my body and I thought, whoa, I'm a weird-looking thing. And it was as though my consciousness had shifted away from my normal perception of reality, where I'm the person on the machine having the experience, to some esoteric space where I'm witnessing myself having the experience. That's what consciousness does. When you move into consciousness, you start to witness the mind and observe the mind as it's working in its chatter instead of being the chatter. I looked down at my arm and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. Because the left brain's shutting down, it's not decoding reality in the way it normally does, and so other levels of reality are able to be perceived because the decoding process is not affecting them. I looked down at my arm and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. I can't define where I begin and where I end, because the atoms and the molecules of my arm blended with the atoms and molecules of the wall. And all I could detect was this energy. And I'm asking myself, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And in that moment, my brain chatter, my left hemisphere brain chatter, went totally silent. Just like someone took a remote control and pushed the mute button, and total silence. Because it's not decoding anymore, the chatter stops. And at first I was shocked to find myself inside a silent mind, but then I was immediately captivated by the magnificence of energy around me. And because I could no longer identify the boundaries of my body, I felt enormous and expansive. I felt at one with all the energy that was, and it was beautiful there. Then all of a sudden, my left hemisphere comes back online and says to me, hey, we got a problem, we got to get some help. So it's like, okay, I've got a problem. But then I immediately drifted right back into the consciousness, and I affectionately referred to this space as La La Land. It was beautiful there. Imagine what it would be like to be totally disconnected from your brain chatter that connects you with the external world. So here I am in this space, and any stress that related to me, to my job, it was gone. And I felt lighter in my body. And imagine all of the relationships in the external world and the many stresses related to any of those, they were gone. I felt a sense of peacefulness. See, all this stuff, all this stress, all this stuff that causes such grief and stops us from finding joy, it's all body-computer stuff. Not consciousness. I'm at the top. And imagine what it would feel like to lose 37 years of emotional baggage. Body-computer stuff. I felt euphoria. Euphoria was beautiful. And then my left hemisphere comes online and it says, hey, you've got to pay attention. We've got to get help. And I'm thinking, I've got to get help. I've got to focus. So I've got to call help. I've got to call work. I couldn't remember the number at work, so I remembered in my office I had a business card with a number on it. So I go to my business room, I pull out a 3-inch stack of business cards, and I'm looking at the card on top, and even though I could see clearly in my mind's eye what my business card looked like, I couldn't tell if this was my card or not, because all I could see was pixels. Because this is not decoding, the left brain's not decoding reality into this state that we perceive normally, now she's starting to see levels before that decoding process takes place, and it's pixels. Because on one level, as I keep saying, this reality is digital. And the pixels of the words blended with the pixels of the background and the pixels of the symbols, and I just couldn't tell. And I would wait for what I call a wave of clarity, and in that moment I would be able to reattach to normal reality, and I could tell that's not the card, that's not the card, that's not the card. It took me 45 minutes to get 1 inch inside that stack of cards. In the meantime, for 45 minutes, the hemorrhage is getting bigger in my left hemisphere. I do not understand numbers. I do not understand the telephone, but it's the only plan that I have. So I take the phone pad and I put it right here. I take the business card, I put it right here, and I'm trying to match the shape of the squiggles on the card to the shape of the squiggles on the phone pad. Eventually, the whole number gets dialed, and I'm listening to the phone, and my colleague picks up the phone, and he says to me, "Woof, woof, woof, woof." And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, he sounds like a golden retriever. And so I say to him, clear in my mind, I say to him, "This is Jill, I need help." And what comes out of my voice is, "Woo, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." And I'm thinking, oh my God, I sound like a golden retriever. And so I didn't know that I couldn't speak or understand language until I tried. Because when I speak now, what goes between my mouth and people's ears is a vibrational frequency. The brain, through the senses, decodes that into sound. And decodes it, the left brain decodes it into language. When it ceases to do that, we sound like a golden retriever because the process of decoding is not working as it should. And Jill Bolte-Taylor, thank goodness, made a full recovery. And if you go onto the internet and you put her name in, there's a 20-minute video in which she tells her story. She tells it very well indeed, because it gives so many insights into the nature and illusory nature of reality which she experienced. So when the two are working in unison, that's perfect. And when we take psychoactive drugs, that opens channels that are not normally open, and we have senses of reality that we don't normally experience. This is the key to the conspiracy on this level. So I asked Neil Haig to put soldiers across the entrance to the left brain, because that's what this society is doing. It's trying to hold us in the left brain state of reality, and so we do not access to the extent that we should this level of the side of the brain, which takes us out into another awareness. And, you know, when I talk at events like this, which attract people who are, at the very least, opening their minds, because we're all opening our minds, because it's a process, I just give it as I see it. But when I talk at places like the Oxford University, which I spoke at last year, I think it was last year, I'm talking to these elite Oxford students, thinking, how do I put this in baby steps so these people are going to get it? Serious. And I went there and I put it in baby steps, and some of them still didn't even get it, what I was trying to get across. Why? Because they are absolutely stuck in that. And that because of the nature of the process they've been through to become elite Oxford students, and as a result of that, that does not compute anything that comes into unity and the vaster vision of self. And where do the great elite Oxford students go to? They go into science, they go into politics, they go into law, they go into medicine. And that's why we have the society that we do. As this man said, an intellectual is someone whose mind watches itself. Someone who is conscious is someone whose consciousness watches the mind and sees the difference between the two. And the left brain prison is in so many ways the reason we live in an imprisoned global society. Breaking out of that is to open the door to freedom. Because then we're in this world, but we're not of it. And because that state is so different to the current norm, that's why those people stand out as they do. René Descartes, the French mathematician and philosopher, defining who we are, said, "I think, therefore I am." I would take that further and say, on that level of mind, it's "I compute, therefore I am." But there's another level beyond that which we'll come to. And so, because the body is a computer, especially vulnerable when it's disconnected from consciousness, it can be programmed. And what the population of the world is being subjected to all the time from within the inner sanctum of this conspiracy, beyond the Bushes and the Obamas, the people you never see, they know how this system works and they structure society to exploit it. And therefore we're being subjected constantly to mass hypnosis, getting us to see the world in a certain way by programming the way the brain reads reality. This guy, Paul McKenna, I'm sure he's known in Australia, he's known in Britain very much, and also increasingly in America. And he's made his name by getting people onto television programs who have phobias and all the other stuff. And at the end of the program, when he's taken them away and done certain things to them, they either have much less extreme phobia or no phobia at all. And what he's doing, in effect, is deleting the hard drive. He's deleting the program in the mind that manifests as that phobia. This is how extreme it can get. On this program, Top Gear, very, very popular in Britain, they had Paul McKenna on. He's in the background there. And they had this guy, Richard Hammond, here. And they took him out, and Richard Hammond thought he was just going to take this Paul McKenna around the track in a car. But what he couldn't remember, because that's what happens with mind control, is that Paul McKenna had told his mind, or hypnotized his mind, that every time he said a certain word or flicked his fingers, this guy, Richard Hammond, was just going to go unconscious. And then he would be told things, and then he would react. So they're standing outside this car, and they're just chatting away normally, and suddenly McKenna says whatever he said, keyword, trigger word, and Hammond goes, And he said to him, when you wake up, you're not going to know how to drive a car. Gets in the car, he doesn't know where to put this key to start the bloody thing. Because his mind's decoding system has been intervened in to program that state of being. They then come back in the studio, and Hammond's having a laugh, and he thinks it's all very funny, and he thinks it's over, except that the programming's still in there. So they're sitting there live in the studio, and they're chatting away, and McKenna does his thing again, and Hammond goes, And he tells Hammond that this car, this toy car, is his real 911 Turbo or something. And he goes across, and he gets in the car, acting as if it's his car. And then this other guy comes in another toy car and smacks him in the side. And Hammond reacts as if his real car's just been smacked. That's the power that you can program the body computer with, and that's what's happening to the human race all the time. We are, those that are not waking up, we are in a hypnotic trance. And that's why people can't see the bloody obvious. Try telling Richard Hammond that wasn't his real car. When you're in a hypnotic stage show, and I've been to many researching this, try telling the guy that he's not seeing an elephant in the audience. As Voltaire said, so long as the people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so, for tyrants are active and ardent and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religious or otherwise, to put shackles upon sleeping men. So putting us to sleep hypnotically is fundamental to it. And that's why this phrase, people are waking up, is so absolutely accurate. That's what we're doing. We're waking up from the trance. And when the guy who thinks there's an elephant in the audience wakes up from the trance, there's no elephant anymore. He can see reality in a different way. It's about keeping us in a hypnotic state. And here's a hypnotist. Television, people don't know it. 99.9% of them don't know it anyway. They are hypnotists. They are implanting into the mind, through a real powerful form of mind control called repetition, a version of the world and reality that, if we take it on, puts us all in the same norm of perception. All the time, 24/7, wherever you go. Me, 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 me. Same repeating things. 19 hijackers who couldn't fly Cessnas suddenly manifested the ability to fly wide-bodied jets. Over and, oh, yeah, see, yeah, don't know where it came from, honey, but they just managed to, they must have read a book. And then you have, in America, on the left, they are Democratic supporting news presenters, and these in Fox, of course, are far, far right-wing supporting presenters, and they are apparently putting different points of view, but together they see the system in the same way. They just want to come from it from a slightly different angle. And that is constantly mind controlling the body computer to believe that there are sides in the world and there are differences and stuff, and take us away from the understanding that behind it all, there's one force manipulating through all sides. Then you've got people like Jon Stewart. Some of his shows are very funny, and this guy, Bill Maher. These are perceived to be, I call them steam whistles. You let off a bit of steam and frustration because they have fun and satirize the political system, but only to a point. So he'll satirize, but as soon as he gets someone in the studio, like Tony Blair a few months ago, he basically licks his backside instead of asking serious questions, which he's asking when the guy isn't there. Come on. And Bill Maher, why he's against, ridiculing the system and all that, and politicians, he vehemently attacks anyone who says that 9/11 was not, the official story was not true. And so all these different forms and media of all different kinds, and sometimes they seem to be different, are all selling you basically the same belief system on the way the system works. And as a result of this mind control technique called repeating, so many people believe things they've never checked, never asked about, never questioned in any way, but because it's the norm, because everyone believes it, it becomes their truth. Oscar Wilde, great English writer, said, most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives are mimicry, their passions are quotation. That's what happens when we just repeat without question. We have teacher repeaters who just repeat what they are told to tell the children and what they learn themselves in their academic life and in teacher training. We have doctor repeaters that just repeat what the drug companies tell them and what they learned at medical schools. Medical schools can, well, I'll perhaps even be right the first time. Medical schools controlled by the drug companies. We have scientist repeaters repeating the bloody nonsense that a tiny, tiny greenhouse gas called carbon dioxide from human form somehow is transforming the bloody climate of the planet. Repeat, repeat, repeat. But classically, journalist repeaters just repeating the official story and calling it journalism, no questions asked. Politician repeaters. I love this one. They've been bent over for so long they think it's standing up. Politician repeaters. I mean, you question politicians about climate change. You know, have you ever done any research into it? No, but it's what the scientists say. So we're passing this legislation. You ever thought about checking it? No. Repeaters, repeaters, repeaters. And then we have people repeaters who take it from these sources and then repeat it among themselves. And then if someone challenges that repetition version of reality, they get ridiculed and condemned for the crime of being different. And a few people can't control the world. It's a piece of cake, given the way things are. And this is why the authorities want to stop people talking publicly in ways that are at odds with the mainstream belief of repeating. This is why so-called visionaries have always been seen as dangerous by the authority of the day, because they're offering another possibility of reality that is at odds with the one reality that tyrannies and dictators always want the public to believe. So all these sources are constantly programming the body computer, the mind, with the version of reality that the system wants, and therefore giving us this false identity that keeps us in servitude. As this man said, we see things not as they are, but as we are. Because as we are dictates how we decode reality and therefore perceive experience. The mind sees everything in terms of division. So when we're in mind, we're in a society of division. When we are in the now consciousness, that sees everything as one, because that's what consciousness is. The infinite I. So who do we think we are? We think we're humans. But who are we? We are consciousness. And to perceive reality and live our lives from those two perspectives brings a dramatic difference in the way we see ourselves and life. Okay, move along. Where are we? We're in a virtual reality universe, which only exists in our head in the physical sense that we perceive. We are decoding vibrational and electrical information into this apparently physical world that only exists in this form in our heads. One level it's digital, and like I say, electrical signals decoded by our brain. So that's where this world actually resides. And it's understandable. I'm standing here now, and everything seems to be outside of me. Everything seems to be out there. But that's an optical illusion. Everything is not out there. It's in here in terms of the physical world. It is within us. Everything is within us. So this age-old line that goes right the way back through the ages, what we call the ages, to go within, is a stunningly accurate truth. Because this is where this is projected from. And see, what the system wants, and one of the key benefits from the system's point of view for us believing that everything's out there, is it wants us to believe that if we don't like what's out there, or what we perceive to be out there, we must change it out there. But there is no out there, so if we're going to change it out there, we're trying to change symbolically, not even symbolically, very accurately, we're trying to change a movie by screaming at the screen. It's not going to change. The movie's just going to run. We've got to go within and find the projector and what's projecting the movie and change that, and then the movie must change. This can only change when this changes. Because by the time it hits the screen and becomes this holographic reality, this illusory physical reality, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. There's no changing it now. There's no changing the movie when it hits the screen. It's done. We've got to change it before it hits the screen. And that means going within to the deeper levels of ourselves where we decode this stuff and therefore change it. Everything that we see is just in our head. Everything, friends, family, and the physical way, everything is in our heads and produced digitally in the end. And it's a virtual reality. On many ways, it works with the same binary system, though it's far more sophisticated, that you find in computer systems, on-off electrical charges. The binary system, although it's more sophisticated in other parts of the brain as well. And again, just like DNA, where the O's and the 1's are in relation to each other decides what appears on the screen. Same with DNA. Everything is information. Everything is information being decoded. And it's being decoded in a desperately narrow band of frequencies. We look out and we think we're seeing this vastness. And again, on one level, it does seem like that. But actually, it's a frequency range that's so tiny, it's funny. Even mainstream science says that of the mass matter that exists in this universe in various forms, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what they perceive to exist in this universe. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that our eyes can access and allows our brain to decode into this reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. As someone rightly said, humans are basically blind because we're operating on such a narrow frequency. This is like just a three-dimensional television station. And beyond this are other television stations which can interact with this one. That's what we call paranormal activity in many ways. Get into that in the second section. And so we're decoding this tiny range of frequencies into this reality. We say seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. Because how we decode reality decides on how we see reality, because it all takes place in the brain, the way the neurons fire and all the rest of it. And one of the things they found in experiments, I was seeing a film about this a couple of years ago, is that when you get a rigid belief system, the neurons fire in a certain network. And what that does is filter reality in relation to the way that network is firing. So when you get information coming into the brain that is at odds with the rigid belief system, those neuron pathways will fire in a certain way and will not decode that information in a way that affects the belief system. It's like just a filter that just only filters reality in a certain way. And then when you shift your belief system, the neuron networks, as before, break up and they fire in a different way. So belief systems are fundamental to filtering reality to perpetuate themselves. This is our base reality. We are energy. And it's only when we pass through the decoding system of the brain that we appear in our heads as three-dimensional physical bodies. And we can get right out there to many dimensions, which is what psychics do and people in consciousness do, or we can live in the record groove, going round and round and round. And of course, this is the thing about science. Scientists are themselves decoding reality according to their belief system. And so they're trying to understand how something works, but their belief system is decoding reality in a certain way. And so they never get it. When scientists are stuck in the left brain, they cannot decode these greater levels of reality and understanding of reality because their brain will not compute them. That's why they really look at people who say some of this stuff and they go, "You're crazy. Can't be." Because they can't get their heads around it. And it's like in pantomimes we have in Britain at Christmas, where, you know, one of the classic things they do is someone standing on the stage and someone will come behind them and the audience will say, "He's behind you." And then they'll turn around and the person will go with them and they'll say, "There's nobody there." And that's what scientists are doing, because they're looking at things and they're decoding them in a certain way and they can't see them because their brain won't compute it. And this is why the cutting-edge scientists are the ones that have a right brain that is active. And that's what a lot of people at the cutting edge of things like quantum physics are developing. Right brain view. As Einstein said, science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind. I would say this: science without consciousness is lame, religion without consciousness is blind. And indeed, with consciousness, there is no religion. Okay, final bit before we have a break. The holographic internet. This is what this reality is, in effect. And like I said a long time ago now, technology today is starting to mirror, in a much less sophisticated way, of course, but it's starting to mirror the reality we're experiencing. If you say to someone, "Tell me about the internet," they'd say it's graphics and websites and words and colors on a screen. Yes, it is. But the only place the internet exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it is electrical circuits and what have you. It's not what's on the screen. That's only just there, nowhere else. And you say to people, "Tell me about television." They say, "Oh, it's moving pictures on a screen." Yes, it is. But the only place television exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's electronic circuits and frequency fields and all the rest of it. And it's the same with us. The only place this world exists is on the screen. And so many people over the years, scientists and what have you, have offered the possibility that this world only exists in this form when it's observed. Well, from the understanding we're getting now, that's exactly what it is. You know, when you play a DVD, it doesn't play the whole DVD on the screen. It plays that part of the DVD that is being read at that time. And what we're doing is, in the act of observation, we are decoding that part of the vibrational construct into this world, but only the part that we're actually observing. And if you could see the unobserved reality that we're experiencing at its prime level, it would just be vibrational, not solid or anything at all. So what is the matrix, as we call it? It is energetic information being read in various ways to create this illusory, vast, apparently infinite, but not, world of solidity. And the other thing, key, that the body is, because it's many things, it's a fantastic creation. It is a crystalline receiver-transmitter, because that's how the decoding system works. We are decoding information, because people say, okay, if we create our own reality and all that stuff, how come we're all seeing the same theater now? Because there is a construct, like I call it the cosmic internet, which exists in vibrational form, which we are collectively decoding into this collective reality. You know, you go on the internet in South Africa or Sydney or London or China, or not so much China, but another place where they don't firewall it off, and you're seeing the same, experiencing the same collective reality, although you're in different parts of the world. Now, you can go to different websites, or you can go to the same website, and you might have different views of that website. That's your individual spin on this collective reality, but you're all experiencing the same collective reality on the World Wide Web. This reality is the same. There's a collective reality which we decode, so we all look out the window, we'll see the same car going past, but we'll all have a different opinion on what we think of that car. The basic reality is the same. And we're crystalline. Do you know, we have trillions and trillions of cells, and every single cell membrane is made of a crystalline substance. We are crystal, walking, talking crystals. And incidentally, the crystalline membrane and the outside of the cell has gates and channels which open according to electrical on-off charges, the binary system, because it works on the same computer system, or basically, and this is interesting too, because these gates and channels open to let in stuff that's good for the cells and shut out things that are bad for the cells. And they open and shut according to electrical charges, which operate in the way they should, left to their own devices. But when you are subjected, as we are now, to massive amounts of electromagnetic fields, etc., these things can open and shut when they shouldn't be, let the bad stuff in and shut the good stuff out. So we are crystals decoding. And the DNA itself is crystalline, and because of its very shape, is an antennae. This is an article about this I got off the internet. From the characteristic form of this giant molecule, a wound double helix, the DNA represents an ideal electromagnetic antennae. On one hand, it is elongated and thus a blade which can take up very well electrical pulses. On the other hand, seen from above, it has the form of a ring and is thus a very magnetical antennae. So we are receiver transmitters. This Don Juan, the shaman source of the Carlos Castaneda books, absolutely encapsulated the whole thing when he said, we are perceivers, we are awareness, we are not objects, we have no solidity, we are boundless. We, or rather our reason, mind, forget this, and thus we entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle from which we rarely emerge in our lifetime. Receiver transmitters. And this is where this comes in. I'll get more into this in the second section. Manipulation by word, destabilization of the body, computer, and transmitter receiver by the poison shite that they put in food and drink, through belief systems like religion, through misrepresentation of reality through education. They're all seeking, and this is when you get behind the people, behind the people, behind the people, into to those levels where they really know how this works. This is what they're targeting. They're targeting all the time our ability to decode reality in the full breadth, sharpness, and clarity that it should be, and put us in these vibrational boxes and eggshells, and therefore put us in this world of total bewilderment where we don't know what the hell's going on, who we are, or what the bloody game is. And so we're connected to this holographic internet. It's got kind of, wires here, but it's not like that. This reality, the one that we are decoding into this apparently physical world, has its mirror now in the wireless internet. If this theater has got the wireless internet, I can't see it. Where is it? Nowhere, apparently. But I could tune this computer to the internet, and out of nothingness, what we can't see, would come the World Wide Web on this screen. That's what we're doing. In the reality that we think is nothing, we're actually decoding a vibrational information, the wireless internet, into this reality, which again comes back to the Matrix movie, very accurate. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around you, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out of your window or you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison you cannot smell, taste, or touch. A prison for your mind. Where does this universe exist in terms of its physicality? It exists in the wireless vibrational construct that our brains decode into this. And we can decode it in a way where we get to many, many levels of reality, or, this is the key of the manipulation, we can access only a fraction of it. And that's what they do in China. They firewall off the Chinese computer system so it can only access a limited part of the World Wide Web, and therefore not access what the authorities don't want them to understand. In so many ways, that's what is happening to us all the time. In the way that we are manipulated into the box of perception, it's firewalling us off from the information, knowledge, and understanding that is there if we were left to our natural state. We've gone from connection to all that is, and slowly but surely, the mind has been turned into the governor. Turned into the governor of our reality. And we've been put into bubbles. Operate within little bubbles, within big bubbles, but operating in a fraction of our true potential. And if that didn't happen, there would be no way in the world that the few could control the many and enslave billions of people as they do. So what is reality? It is the range of frequencies that we are decoding and how we are decoding them. I'll just tell you this story very quickly to kind of sum up everything I'm saying. In this book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Tolbert, he tells a story. It's a great book. He tells the story of something he experienced where he's at a party which his father organized, and he had a stage hypnotist along. And he's getting them to do party tricks and all that stuff, getting them to eat a potato and think it's an apple. How does he do that? He implants the belief in the decoding system that it's an apple, and therefore the person eats a potato, but that electrical signal is decoded as an apple because that's what the decoding system has been manipulated to do. Now imagine that over the range of society and everyday life, because that's what's happening to us all the time. But he got this guy called Tom, who was at the party, and he sat him down, and he got him to do various things. And then towards the end, he said to him, when I bring you back to a waking state, you're not going to be able to see your daughter in the room. And before he brought him back, he brought the daughter, and he stood the daughter in front of her father, so her father's looking into her belly. And then he brings him back, apparently to a waking state. And he says to him, can you see your daughter in the room, Tom? He's looking around. No, I can't see her. Not here. People are giggling. She's giggling. You can't hear them. Or hear her, anyway. And then the hypnotist went behind the daughter, and he put his hand in the small of her back, and he said, Tom, I'm holding something. What am I holding? Daughter's here, Tom's here. He looks at him bewildered because it's obvious. He says, you're holding a watch. He says, there's an inscription on the watch. Can you read it? He peered forward, read the inscription. His daughter's here. Now, if you explain that to people, explain that to a mainstream scientist. You say, impossible, stupid, crazy. No. The only place that his daughter existed in that physical form was in his head when it was decoded into that form. Before the decoding happens, she is just energy, an energetic form, consciousness in that way. And so if he, because the implanted belief was so well done that it affected his ability to decode that, and the brain didn't code that energy field, he didn't bring his daughter into the level that his eyes can perceive, what we call physical level. And so everything else in the room existed in the physical because he decoded that, but not the daughter. And because the daughter wasn't there, he could see what was behind her. And when you see the levels to which the mind can be manipulated, and you think that the people behind this conspiracy understand that, then you can see how easy it is as long as we don't understand this information. The world seems solid, seems very solid, but it can't be, because the world's made of atoms, and atoms have no solidity. As someone pointed out, if you take an atom to be the size of a cathedral, then the nucleus in the center of the atom would be the size of a 10-cent piece. The rest of it is empty space. How can empty space, just an energetic, non-solid thing, become the solid world? It can't be. And quantum physicists, how can that be? Atoms have no solidity, but the world's solid. How can it's just the decoding process. That's all it is. And that's what they miss. That it's in our heads. And the world, I'll finish on this bit. The world is a hologram, a gigantic hologram. That's what the universe is. And everything within it, including us on the physical level, are holograms. And we see holograms, of course, in our everyday experience in the shops and stuff. And for people who haven't come across it, how they make them, where something appears three-dimensional but isn't, is by taking a laser beam, breaking part of it off, and it goes across the object they want to photograph. And what it does is it picks up a vibrational version of that object. Another part of the laser beam goes directly onto, or virtually directly onto, a photographic print. And then this part of the laser beam that's gone across the object is directed back onto the same photographic print, and the two laser beams hit each other. What this creates is what they call an interference pattern. And it's like dropping two stones in a pond, and as the waves come out and hit each other, that waveform is a waveform version of those two stones, where they fell, how fast, and all the rest of it. Exactly the same interference pattern. This is a holographic photographic print of an interference pattern, which looks very much like fingerprints, interestingly. But when you fire a laser at this photographic print, this interference pattern, which is a vibrational version of the object that's been photographed, suddenly, out of nowhere, comes a three-dimensional, or apparently three-dimensional form, which the best of them can look totally solid, except you can put your hand through them because they're not solid at all. All these are holograms. Hello, Mom. This is a landscape That's not a very good one, but it gives the feel of it. These are holograms. These are virtual reality games which give the three-dimensional feel. And so the three-dimensional world that we think we live in, it's just an illusion made up of holographic images which appear solid, because that's the way we decode them, but aren't really. The world is vibrational, and we decode it into the physical when we observe it. It's a construct. It's illusory. It's like when that Neo character in the Matrix went into a higher state of consciousness, he saw beyond the physical to that which is behind it. And interestingly, this is January's New Scientist, one of the most prestigious mainstream science magazines in Britain, just a few months ago, and the front page is, "You are a hologram projected from the edge of the universe." Even mainstream scientists, some of them are starting to realize this, except when you read the article, they missed the point massively. It's not projected from the edge of the universe at all. It's going on inside us. And interestingly, holograms have an amazing characteristic. Every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. And so if you take a holographic print, and you cut it into 4, and you fire the laser at the 4 pieces, you don't get a quarter-size part of the whole picture when you do that. You get a quarter-size version of the whole picture. Every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole wherever you go. And that's why we have this stuff in alternative healing. That's why reflexologists can find parts of the hands and the feet and other parts of the body that relate to the body as a whole. They can find a place that connects with the heart, that connects with the liver. That's why acupuncture can find points on the ear which represent and connect with different parts of the body. Because every part of the body is a smaller version of the whole body. And in the same way, every single part of this universe, whether it's an ant, a person, a tree, a blade of grass, a breath of air, in the